three traditions, the Gaudiya-vaisnava parampara, the Shakti worship, which we just saw a glimpse of, and the Ramakrishna mission. These three have been three important pillars of strength which have held the Sanatanic wisdom, the Sanatana culture at the grassroots in Bengal. And like we mentioned yesterday and day before yesterday as well, there has been continuous onslaught on Bengal from the last 800 years, and the Pala Empire was the last Hindu-Buddhist kingdom. Even amidst so much of political turmoil and losing a large part of geography into Bangladesh, still Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma survives there, and these are very rich, vibrant traditions which are still existing. So we would like to understand historically what is the contribution. We always imagine, Halley, that the Gaudiya-vaisnava or the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's bhakti tradition is very soft, gentle, etc. Did it have a contribution towards warding away the invaders and protecting the Sanatanic wisdom? You belonging to the same tradition as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?
So, well, yes. So one of the problems in 19th century was that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Gaudiya-Vaishnavism had been started to be perceived as a soft, namby-pamby, crying form of religion, which is also why Vivekananda was a little, inside he was very devoted to Radha Krishna, but outside he would say, no Radha Krishna, for the time being, now only Parthasarathi Krishna. But that doesn't mean he was against it. But that's not how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, or that's not how Gaudiya Vaishnavism began. We have records, we have discussed earlier, so I'll not go into too much into this, that once, under the instigation of some fellow Brahmanas, Chand Kazi, the ruler of Nadia, not ruler, but the local administrator, he sent his soldiers to go and destroy the Mridangams and put a farman to stop all Harinam in whole of Nadia. So when that happened, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu led a protest march, a first of its kind non-cooperation movement kind of a thing, against this Qazi, with hundreds and thousands of Navadvip dwellers pouring in the streets with flaming torches. They go and surround the house, and then the first thing that Mahaprabhu says, according to authentic biography, is Jhat Dhori an Kati Fallow Matha. You bring him quickly and get cut off his head. So this was first. Of course, the Qazi had bolted the doors from inside, so he couldn't be captured. So then Mahaprabhu said, put fire around the house. then it was then that Nityananda Prabhu got alarmed, because at the end he is this revival, this Mahapurusha. He fell down at the feet of Mahaprabhu saying that please don't do this. So, and then Mahaprabhu cooled down, Chand Kazi came, eventually Chand Kazi got converted to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. He became a very deep, devotional Rasika of Radha Krishna love lord. He composed many poems and songs on the topic. So anyways, this is the Kshatra of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Now, if Gaudiya Vaishnavism had any impact on preservation of Bengal, yes. See, there is two ways to preserve Sanatana culture. It's not just by the arm strength, you also need the intellectual strength. So Gaudiya Vaishnavism provided the intellectual strength to battle these difficult times. So by making Radha Krishna the symbol of love, it was a love deprived times, right? Like this video going viral of that Punch, that tiny monkey hanging on to that stuffed toy. So it was a love deprived time, so you need some icons of love. So Radha Krishna became the new icons of love, and also you need to, attack that which is ailing the Hindu society. Basically, the caste issues, because a large part of people were converting to Islam, half by sword and half by choice. Because once, if it was so strict that if you sit in the same asana and eat with a Musliman, then you are ostracized from society. You are no longer a Hindu, and nobody will give their daughters to you in marriage. So what do a person do? Just you imagine you are a Hindu and you have been forcefully, sometimes there was reports that, go mamsa, they used to smell, make the smell, go in, and if, just by smelling, you could be ostracized from the society. If you are accidentally smelled, forced to smell that gomamsa, what do? So, and then you are not accepted. So imagine a situation, if you are not accepted, after 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, would you stay back in Sanatana Dharma? Of course not, because you have to survive, you have to get your daughters married, sons married, you have your own. So obviously you would think it's better I become a Muslim. Why do I need to stay with my people? For no fault of mine. I have not done anything. So these were a lot of problems. So then Mahaprabhu said this Chandalapi Dvijashrishta Haribhakti Parayana. He highlighted all these stotras, which says if a Chandala becomes Haribhakti Parayan, he is better than a Dvija, a Brahmana. So these kind of alternative paths were being developed by Mahaprabhu, where he is actually not bringing down the Brahmana. Exactly what Vivekananda said, that our salvation is not by dragging the Brahmana down to the level of Shudra, but by raising the Shudra to the level of Brahmana. So that's exactly what he's saying. He's letting Brahman stay, but he's providing an alternative path, that if you have a Haribhakti Parayan, any caste, he is as good as Brahman. So these were the kind of narratives which were being popularized, and that actually helped a lot in consolidating Hinduism.
So there was this internal reformation and internal thought which probably the Islamic and the Christian society has never got.
Yeah.
Right? The reformation happens from inside.
Yeah.
What have you found in your research and study? You have written extensively on the invaders and the infidels, Sandeep ji.
Namaste. Yeah, okay, I don't know where to start because the subject is so vast. So let's do some recap. Actually, not just the Islamic invasions and the horror that Bengal underwent throughout the centuries, but it dates much further back. I attribute the misfortune of Bengal to what I call as Karna's curse, Karnan Shapa. Because Karna got Angaraja unearned, as a gift, as a political trick by his evil mentor Duryodhana. And all of us who have read Mahabharata will know that in one entire year, exactly how many minutes or seconds did Karna actually govern Bengal?
No evidence.
None. He spent all his time in the evil chamber of Duryodhana and the Dushta Chatushtaya, of which he was an integral part. So if you have to blame someone, please blame Karna. But that's on a humorous note. Since we were on the Vaishnava, Gaudiya-vaisnava tradition, I think just to give some historical data and setting the context in a chronological fashion, in my research I found that the earliest historically recorded mention of the Gaudiya-vaisnava tradition occurs in 4th century BC. It flourished under a king called Chandravarman of the Pushkara dynasty. So this information was accidentally discovered by I think Mahamahopadhyaya Shri Haraprasad Shastri, who deciphered it. So it was discovered, this inscription was lying on the back wall of a dilapidated cave under a waterfall, or behind a waterfall in the Bankura district. It is known as the Sasunya inscription. So that inscription, which was found on the back wall of a cave, its legend was the Sudarshan Chakra of the Vishnu, of Bhagavan Shri Vishnu, and this is what it says. It has just 3 lines, only 3 lines have survived. It says, Pushkaranadipater Maharaja Shri Simhavarmana Putrasya Maharaja Shri Chandravarmana Kritihi Chakraswaminaha Dasagrenati Srishtaha. So basically it gives the introduction to the author of this. Basically it was a temple. So he's written the inscription. It says that this work, or this grant was given by the Dasagrena of Chakraswami, which is Vishnu. And here he is of course in the form of Chakraswami. So the earliest mention of this Gaudiya worship of or Gaudiya-Vaishnavism is in the form of Chakraswami. And from there it spread to various parts, but it's also interesting to note that the contemporary of this Simhavarma or Chandravarman was another king in a neighboring state. Today it is Assam. So that comes from the Varman dynasty in Assam. And these terms, these surnames, Varma, it is a purely Kshatriya name. Even today, all of you here will know S.D. Burman, R.D. Burman. So Burman is nothing but Varman. So it's a Kshatriya lineage. And so you see this kind of awesome continuity, and Kerala kings incidentally also bore the name Varma. Martanda Varma, Kulashekar Varma, Raja Ravi Varma, the same lineage basically. And not just that, both West Bengal and Kerala also share another continuity. They are the only two states to be ruled by communists. So you see, the historical continuity is never ending. So coming back to this Chakraswami tradition.
Varma means the armor.
Varma means armor. So yeah. So this Chakraswami tradition spread all over India throughout the centuries. Thane Sar in Haryana had a fabulous Chakraswami temple which was first destroyed by Mahmud of Ghazni, and it, even today it's never got rebuilt. And this Chakraswami temple in Thane Sar enjoyed the same popularity and sanctity as all the Krishna temples in Mathura, Dwarka and elsewhere. And in fact, late in the 11th century, the Mahanubhava Sampradaya, its founder was Chakradhar Swami. It recognizes 5 devatas. Out of them, Chakraswami or Chakrapani is one of them. So you see the spread. Even today, I was told by some, not today, but recently, somebody told me that there is a Chakraswami temple in Auckland, in New Zealand. So he continued to tell. So by the 5th century, Gaudiya-vaisnavism was thriving throughout Bengal, and by Bengal, not today's West Bengal. It includes Bangladesh, parts of Assam, parts of Odisha, parts of Bihar, especially towards Bhagalpur.
Even in South Korea, in Cambodia.
Exactly. Anga Vanga Kalinga. And major centers were Govinda Swami temple in Bogra district, Shvetavaraha temple, Pradyumneshwara temple in Tipera district, Anantanarayana Devasthana, and by 7th century, the most sacred of all these kshetras was the Kokamukha, which is in Himalayas. This Kokamukha also enjoys an extremely sacred spot in our annals. It is in the vicinity of Kaushiki Nadi. It is mentioned in Varaha Purana and even in the Mahabharata. Now, perhaps the greatest, evidence, historical evidence, if you want to put it that way, is the Paharpur group of sculptures. This was also deciphered, among others, by Haraprasad Shastri and others. And that gives the most definitive evidence to the Bengali Vaishnava Sampradaya. And there have been several dedicated studies. I think they need to be republished in today's context. This dates back to 7th and 8th century CE. These group of sculptures have sculptures showing images of Shri Krishna's Bala Leela all the way up to Rukmini Kalyana and his marriage to Satyabhama as well. And these Paharpur group of sculptures form the most solid foundation of the Gaudiya-vaisnava Sampradaya. 800 years later, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu deeply drank from this tradition and saved Sanatana Dharma in Bengal. So I'll conclude my opening remarks with this.
So it has a holy tradition starting from the BCs. So at least about 1,500, 2,000 years before the birth of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the Vaishnavism existed there. Arathi Mohodaye, so you have been associated with the Ramakrishna mission from many decades. So what was the contribution of the Divyatraya, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Sharada Mata and Swami Vivekananda in the cultural renaissance of the country? And what is its current contribution, or the other Swamijis belonging to the Parampara? What has been their contribution in the national integration and the freedom movement, etc.? Could you highlight that?
The seeds of this spiritual renaissance or Sanatana renaissance we see in Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Sharda Mata's life, and of course Swami Vivekananda. Some less known facts and sayings of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa I'd like to bring to light. Of course, people in that tradition will know this very well. So, one thing is for sure, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he relived the Rishi's intense and independent spirit of quest for truth. Today, we have somehow arrived at a point where we think just belief is bhakti. Nambu, out of fear or out of compulsion or to be socially accepted, whatever it is, or out of some emotional satisfaction. But in Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, we see that Rishi Zeal, who wanted to know the truth, he wanted to experience and live that. So that is what we see. Of course, he abided by all the Shastras, but he also had his own independent quest. So that is very special, which we see in the Rishis, where they debated, they differed with each other, but they all had one quest for truth. So he's kind of revived the Rishi Parampara, you can say, in Kali Yuga, because just scholarship or just innocent faith are two extremes. But Ramakrishna imbibed both of them and had this Rishitva in him. So by doing that, he has perhaps revived the Rishi Parampara for the modern age. And secondly, I'd like to quote from him only. He says, truth is ultimate. For Kali Yuga, Satya Vachanave Tapassu, says. And he says, I used to stand before Kali and say, oh ma, here is your dharma and adharma. Take away both, give me just Shuddha Bhakti. Take Sukha Dukkha, give me just Shuddha Bhakti. Take Shubha, give me Shuddha Bhakti. But I could not say, take away truth. I could not say, take your Satya, because Satya is everything. So he has given us a message that stand by truth. Today, if we see, observe the society, today we are so easily carried away by narratives. Nobody looks for facts. Anything charming, beautiful, which particularly comes in a package of good English words, people get carried away. If it comes from a Bollywood trash, it is all the more acceptable. So people don't stop and think and see whether it is truthful or fact, or is it necessary or relevant or substantial, nothing. Just go with whatever is attractive. So when Ramakrishna said, Kali Yugadali Satyave Tapassu, tapas means there's some friction in that, right? To accept truth is not an easy thing. But you must do that. That is tapasya. And there's one popular idea about Ramakrishna that he did the samanvaya of all the matas. And that has been broadly misunderstood or explained also. But I think I'd quote from Sakshat Sharada Devi. Because nobody else can be the most authoritative person to tell about what Ramakrishna's abhipraya was. In one conversation, Sharda Mata says, I don't think Ramakrishna did all the sadhanas to prove that all are the same. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and myself, she says, we believe that Sanatana Dharma is forever. All others will come and go with time. Yes. But Ramakrishna was curious to know the different paths. Jotomat, Totopat. How many matas, so many paths. So he was curious to know what is there in everything. And if I quote from Ramakrishna himself, he says, in a Sangeeta Kachari, in a concert, there will be two types of Shehnai Vadakas. One will play the Shruti Bhom, another will play the Raga Raginis. So Ramakrishna says, I'm like the Raga Ragini player. So I want to enjoy everything. So we should understand that Ramakrishna did not have any this kind of a stupid zeal to prove that everything is right. He was more practical. He knew that the world is full of varieties. So equality in that sense is not right. But Ramakrishna, I think there's one more thing here. When we say Sarva Dharma Samanvaya, it is Dharma Samanvaya. Every mata that goes with Dharma and towards Dharma is Dharma, not others. Dharmam yo badhate dharmaha nasa dharma kudharmakaha. So a dharma that disturbs other dharmas is not a dharma, it's a kudharma. So those matas which come with the predators, who invaded us, who colonized us, who have nothing but hate and intolerance. So they are not dharmas at all. So if at all he did a samanvaya of dharmas and matas, it is about all those ashaya dharmas and matas which had the spirit of quest for truth and the honor for dharma. So under that you have Vaishnava, Shaiva, even Advaita. It's very beautiful that Advaita, which is beyond name and form, can also come together, have a balance, a very harmonious balance with Shakta, Vaishnava, Agama, Vaidika, and what, of course, like Dr. Ganesh, and I don't like to call it folk at all. Every time I have to say it, I don't find another word. I think Sandeep ji could give us a better word. Deshi, yes. He could put everything together. He could put everything together, and ultimately, whatever goes towards truth with stands in truth is right according to him. So these were the seed ideas he gave. And one very beautiful thing about Sri Ramakrishna is that all this massive social work and contribution to national reconstruction that Swami Vivekananda did, he gained inspiration from Sri Ramakrishna. There's an instance, I don't remember in whose house, maybe Balram Bose house somewhere, Ramakrishna went into Bhava Samadhi one day, and he was speaking in that state of ecstasy, and he says, this Sakshullaka Manava, this trivial man, human being, how dare he say, I have daya for the society, I'm going to help the society. Who are you to help? In his own words, in Bengal village man, he says, had to. How dare you say that? At a lower position, he's at the higher position. He is Paramatma. He's come there to help you do your punya. So never say help or daya, always say sarv and puja. So Narendra, who was Swami Vivekananda's previous name was Narendranath, he was a young boy, a teenager of 17, 18 years. He was so thrilled by these words, He can't sit, he just rushes out. He throws out his arms and throws up his arms and said, wow, what a great realization I got today. If at all a day comes when I can say this to the world, I'm going to proclaim this and take it to every human being. This idea of it is not help but seva. And I'm going to work it out in my life. That's exactly what Swami Vivekananda did later on. And Ramakrishna not only spoke about divine things, he had a keen observation of the society. Today what we see, the communist, leftists, all these people who always feel very proud to discard or disrespect everything, Swadeshva, Swadharma, Swadhashe, Vesha, Bhusha, Bindi to Vedanta, everything they go on ridiculing. So Ramakrishna noticed this development at its seed form. Of course, Macaulay education started incidentally 1 year before Sri Ramakrishna was born. He was born in 1836. 1835, Macaulay's Visha Bija started. And I think Ramakrishna was born just to undo that in some way possible. So Ramakrishna, he calls these colonized minds as Kolkata Babus. You can read this many times in his gospel or Kathamrita, which we call Vacharveda in Kannada. He says, these Kolkata Babus, they have no brains. They don't think at all. They're slaves of the British. And he gives one beautiful example. He gives a drishtanta. He says, somebody tells a Kolkata Babu, "Arey dekho, tumhare pados wale ghar mein aag lag gayi hai." But the Kolkata Babu very calmly says, "Aisa kya? No, tomorrow I'll read the English newspaper. If it's there on the newspaper, I'll read it." I don't think there can be a better way of representing what these Kolkata Babus are about. So he was very daring and he dared to ridicule. And his best contribution is Narendra himself. During his last days, he could not even speak because of throat cancer. But he writes on a small cheeky. You can see the picture there. He writes and he says, Narendra will go across the world and do Loka Kalyana. Narendra he says, I'm not interested in all that. I want Brahma Jnana. But Ramakrishna will say, no. Kadi Mata will hold your hair and make you do. So, yes, Loka Sangraha. And many times he tries to go back into his dhyana, but he is pushed out. Then he remembers his Guru's Vakya. And he says, your Karunya will make you do everything. So Vivekananda was not just a Medhavi, he was a Karunamurti. He had great compassion. He used to cry when he saw problems like that. So that was the beautiful combination of great heart and mind.
Cry secretly sometimes. Swamiji used to go, leave the room, and then come back, his eyes red. So his disciples knew that he has been crying.
Yes, there's a very nice instance recorded in his life. So one night in Belur midnight, Vivekananda, he just woke up and started walking on his corridor. He was very tense and his face was red and he was crying, weeping, and somebody came and asked, what is wrong, Swamiji? He said, something has happened somewhere. I can hear the cries of thousands of people. And nobody figured out what it was. The next morning, there was this news that in some other part of the globe, there was an earthquake and thousands of people had died. So he was so sensitive that way. Okay, now coming to Sharada Mata, who is mostly known as just Mrs. Ramakrishna, but she was an independent personality. I personally love her more because, she is like the Shanta Shakti. We all think that Shakti means lot of galata and all that, but she was that, I feel she is the perfect Bharatiya Nari ideal. She is a pativrata, but not the pativrata who just is snubbed and the suffering angel, not like that. I don't see suffering in her at all. Her life is full of problems, of course, like our poet says.
Just to interrupt you, sorry. This all-suffering image of pativrata is a single-handed contribution of crappy social movies in all languages of Indian cinema.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
This image was not there.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you. So, sorry, I was saying something.
Problems.
Yes, ಒಬ್ಬರು ಕವಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಸಂಕಟಗಳ ವನವಸನವನುಟ್ಟು ನಿಂತ ಶಿಖರವೇ ಅಂತ. She was like the shikhara, the achal, the mountain, which is called achal, which doesn't move. She is very firm and calm, but around her, all over the mountain, is the forest of difficulties. But she is still calm. Such a beautiful way to put it. Shivarudrappa ಅವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಸಂಕಟಗಳ ವನವಸನವನುಟ್ಟು ನಿಂತ ಶಿಖರವೇ. So she had all these things which we call problems, but she never called them so. She said, I was always happy. Everybody used to say, oh Papa, Amma ನೀವು ಎಷ್ಟು ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಾ. She would snap and say, no, I was very happy. So that's her speciality. She realized happiness within herself. And she was the, like we see, the Satitva, Matratva, Tapasvini, Guru, all these aspects of Stri. And like Sri Krishna says, Kirti Shri Vakchanarinam, Smritihi Medha, Dhritihi Kshama, all those we actually see in Sharada Mata. And she was a combination of this purity, selflessness, love, karunya, all that. Along with that, there was another phase. She was a Swabhimanini. She was so full of self-esteem that she never begged even her husband for time. She didn't even ask him for his time and love. Of course, love they always had. And she had her own life. She knew her role very well. And she was also very, very firm. I don't know how many of you know this incident when a madman, like he was drugged by his wife because he was kind of an impotent person. So he came to Sharada Devi. She was a young woman. She was just 32 years old. She was in Kamarpukur village. He came there and suddenly the drug overworked on him and he ran after her. So he was about to pounce on her. She ran and finally she could not. It was a very lone place, no people around. The next thing Sharada Mata did was she pushed him, she threw him onto the floor. She climbed on him. She punched her knee onto his chest. She held his tongue out and she slapped him till he fell unconscious. This is an incident recorded in Sharada Mata.
Almost like Manishasara.
Yes. Yes. But later on when people kept on asking her about it, she said no. She was so modest to never make a show of what she did. So even the Telo Bello incident when she went into the jungle, she had to counter dacoits in the mid of the night. She was only 18 years old. But she was not afraid. She talked to them, she convinced them, they were so moved and they became her friends. They gave a lot of butter peas and sent her home. So she knew how to manage things. She was all alone, poverty and helplessness, a widow with no money. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa got 6 rupees salary, but he didn't even maintain that properly. And she was left with nothing at all. But
she didn't have money to buy needles.
Yes.
So after Ramakrishna passed away, she used to tie the sari tour. She used to put knots on it.
She didn't have money for salt.
Yeah. But when she goes back in memory, she says those were the happiest days.
Yes.
I have never felt sadness in my life.
Yes. And then what we see is Nivedita puts it very beautifully. She says the Vedic woman and the modern woman, Sharada Mata is the bridge. She's brought all the beautiful things down to us in this world. And
She
then
was the one who said, who is the Queen of India when people said Victoria?
that
It's
is
Sita
Nivedita's,
Devi is
yes.
the Queen.
Nivedita in the school says. I'll come to that later. So, and one more thing is, this national movement, freedom movement was in full swing. It was happening in the Bankura district also, where Sharda Mata was living, Joy Rampati. So Sharda Mata, people come to her and say, Amma, what is your abhipraya of this? You know what she says? She tells the boys, I'm seeing you're only shouting Vande Mataram, doing nothing. You're emotional fools. This is not how you get freedom. Bring charakas, learn to weave, do farming, generate employment, generate wealth, stop buying from the British.
So Atmanirbhar.
She had a practical solution to this. And you know what? She arranged a lot of medical camps. There was one doctor called Lalit Mohan Babu who used to come to her, to Jairam Bhatti. He was her Diksha disciple. So she would tell him, every time you come to just see me and you treat me and go, look, there are so many people suffering here. So every time you come, bring your medicines here. I'll arrange camps for you. So Sharda Mata used to arrange medical camps for people in the whole of Bankura district. And she would organize people and medicine and all the help that the doctor wanted. And also, she used to arrange Jagadhatri Puja, Durga Puja, all these. And she would invite the local artists like the Kathakars and singers and dancers and bawals, the poorest of the poor, because they were all kind of, their lives were shattered after the colonization happened. All these people, to this day, we see them like beggars and not like artists, right? ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಬಾಗಿಲು ಯಾರು ಬಸವನ ಅವ್ರು ಬಂದರೆ ವೇಷ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದರೆ we see them like beggars today. But in the past, they were all nomadic artists. So that feel had gone. So Sharda Mata used to remunerate them. She had no money herself. She would collect money and see that they're all remunerated, and she would arrange for all this. And best of anything is the way she accepted Nivedita. Swami Vivekananda was tense when Nivedita came here. He said, if Ma accepts you, the whole of Bharatiya Naris will accept you. And she accepted her, she touched her, she made her sit on her own coach, and she talked to her, she fed her with her hands. And and one more thing is, when Swami Vivekananda was out to go to the west and do something for the country, in many quarters he had a lot of opposition, including his own Guru Bhais. The one person, he himself says, the one person in this whole world who understood and sided with me is Sharda Mata, a woman, a village woman, illiterate, uneducated woman in a village who understood my dream. And Sharda Mata writes to him, says, go ahead Naren, you have a mission. Thakur always used to say that, go ahead, do great things. So she dared to say that. So like this we see in Sharda Devi. I think coming to Vivekananda will be very long. We'll come to that later.
Thanks a lot, Bhagini. Let us go back in time. So the Ramakrishna mission came in one Yuga Sandhi Kala when the Europeans were invading India, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's presence was when the Islamic invasion was going on. So you want to continue trace the history and what led to the calamities of the invasion and the resistance put forth,
which infected most parts of the world. But to understand the dimensions of the horror that Bengal suffered for so long, this story of the Islamic horrors of Bengal is much lesser known compared to the northwest and extreme north of India, which is where repeated invasions happened. But to understand the dimensions of that, we need to understand, recall the fact that Bengal for many centuries was one of the great hubs of Sanskrit. I repeatedly asked Śatāvadhānī Ganesh to give me some literature, Sanskrit literature from Bengal. He said nothing has survived except Saratikaranamrita. Nothing at all has survived. The magnitude of destruction, and look at the ancient names of that region. It's so beautiful. Gauda, Vanga. Gauda comes from Buddha, Bella. Vanga, Samatata, Harikela, Chandradvipa, Pundra, Varendra, Radha, Tamralipti, Suvarnavithi, Navyavakashika, Vardhamana Bhukti, Kanakagrama, Meghana, Pushkarana, today it's called Pokarna, Karna Suvarna yelli Murshidabad yelli. So this is
happening. Names also have been Nama, Rupa.
Nama, Shesha, Rupa, yella hogide. So the Pala capital, for example, was a place called Jayapura. which was situated on the banks of Ganga. Near that place was something called Tapanatanaya or Yamuna, which starts off from Bhagirathi, which branches off from Bhagirathi, and this kshetra is also known as Triveni of Bengal, which is in the north of Hooghly district, and here this place is also called Muktaveni, breeds separated to clearly distinguish it from Triveni at Prayaga, which is called Yuktaveni.
Yeah, sure.
So, idella
Distributary is becoming distributary and again becoming tributary.
Exactly. So again, this is how we preserved our, geographical knowledge. Geography, map nodiyalla. So this has been the tradition of the Sanatani tradition of Bengal, and for the longest time it has always been prosperous. For example, I'll come to that in a bit. And it was also a land where many Dharmashastra Granthas were written. Dayabhaga, for example, it was still, I think it is still the most authoritative work there. And if you look at its history from that angle, you can also approach it from the root of Dharmashastra Granthas. Allu sigate. And how flourishing it was annadike one example, very late example. During the Mughal period, Manuchi is a European traveler. He dedicates several chapters, very long chapters, to describing only the geography of Bengal. And the Manuchi arrived at a time when Bengal was at its worst of being oppressed. Allu kuda baritane, the price of essential commodities were very cheap, and it was produced in abundance. Guda, the Billa Jaggery was. The whole land was overflowing with an excess supply of banana and banana made products. Sugar, tuppa, ghee, so all milk related products. This was under the oppressive Mughal regime. And if its original genius, if our original Sanatana genius had been allowed to flourish there, things would have been much different. And now when you go on a flashback back to Bakhtiyar Khalji. He was the first Islamic invader to undertake that expedition, because all the Muslim kings till that time. So Bakhtiyar stepped into Bengal via Bhagalpur. What he calls, what is today known as Bihar. So Arup in the Bandito. Via UP and then Bihar, and then he stood on the borders of Bengal. And his invasion is around 1193 or 1192 CE, so that's late 12th century. Because till then, the so-called Delhi Sultanate had just been established, and they considered Bengal as a very harsh territory which was abundant with marshland and crocodiles. So Bakhtiyar made this, he was a freebooter, like a freelance mercenary. So he said he took the daring, he made the daring, and he conquered parts of it, and it was so destructive that after that Bengal never recovered.
So the freelancing so religiously.
Yeah. So just to give an extent of the kind of destruction he did in one shot, this one man was responsible for the complete wipeout of Bauddha Dharma. Just one maiden invasion, forever gone. And of course, all the Hindu traditions he wiped out, and all his Bane-Gaides, all his court chroniclers and other so-called Islamic historians extol him for one reason, one among several common themes that they praise Bakhtiyar Khalji, is that during this great champion of Islam's the conquest of Bengal, India got the maximum number of converts into Islam. He might be a minor figure when you compare him to, all these Alauddin Khalji and Tughlaq and other types of people, but the devastation he did, the long-term impact that his ravaging had, Bengal is still not recovered. So, and it was so bad that the aftermath of what he did in Bengal was so bad that even after his death, many Delhi sultans who came later, after his death, they sent their criminals or they sent their officers as a punishment posting to Bengal. It was so bad.
Like sending them to Australia from
Something
Europe.
like
Yeah.
And in the same region that he conquered, Gaud wasn't Gaudiya-vaisnava, but it was also name of a capital city. So in just 3 days to a span of a week, Bhaktiar Khalji literally physically erased the city from existence. Physically. Imagine bombing Bangalore out of existence. This is what he did. And from there, I call this history of Bengal as the journey of 3 B's: Bhaktiar, British, and Banerjee. So there is a straight line that you can draw. So Bengal lost her freedom first with Bhaktiar Khalji, and
Basu.
huh?
Basu and
Basu also. Yeah. So 4 B's.
Jyoti Basu.
4 B's. So that Papishta Satovidan, so bad idea. Hage, so this is how there is a straight line you can draw. And from Bhaktiar Khalji, when we get to the time of the late era of later years of Aurangzeb, and especially in the era of Shah Jahan, guess which was the most prosperous industry in Bengal?
Slaves.
Keep guessing.
Slaves.
Slavery. Slaves, and not just any slaves. The rate of extortionate taxation was so bad in Bengal province that peasants, it was all agricultural country back then, so poor peasants, most of them Hindus, they would castrate their male children. Boys as young as 6 to prepubescent boys. They would castrate them and sell them as slaves just to pay off the taxes. And what would these slaves become, these castrated boys become? What was their employment? They would go to all these jananas and become guards there. So one entire civilization has been undergoing this nonsense, this horror for not 100 or 200 years, more than 700 years, continuously. So from Bhaktiar Khalji till Battle of Plassey, you don't have a single Hindu sovereign power ruling in Bengal. Unlike other parts of North India where periodic battles for resistance happen. It's only in Bengal that this didn't happen, and still, by the turn of the century, during the British freedom struggle and all that, it rose back. Its Hindu societal traditions, its bhakti traditions, its spiritual traditions were intact. It was preserved without political power. You don't find this aspect of history in any kingdoms, in any region that was ruled by Muslims in India. This is the one great distinction that Bengal can boast of, and India also lost her freedom first in Bengal.
Yes.
Battle of Plassey. So Battle of Plassey, Clive figured out a very clever formula. He, when Robert Clive, won the Battle of Plassey, he won it, all this trade, what is that, Mir Jafar, Mir Qasim and all that. Mir Qasim was not a traitor. Well, he was a traitor, sure, but he was a traitor of Hindus, mostly. So Hindus welcomed Robert Clive there. They saw him as liberators. This is recorded in a biography of Raja Ramakrishna Sen. Until Ramakrishna Sen, I have to come to your point, you mentioned about him. So, for the first time, Raja Ramakrishna Sen, in his biography, it's mentioned that in the region surrounding Palashi basically, Calcutta was not a big city then. Hooghly, all the Murshidabad, all these are in close proximity. For the first time after 600 years, public Durga Puja was introduced by him. So there is a grey area there, but it is recorded and it is true. Public Durga Puja. So it was revived on a grand scale and people welcomed Robert Clive.
We also see that at a certain place, Sharadama says, there was some nationalistic, issues going on. Sharadama says, I have never seen these kind of things during Maharani's time. which is Queen Victoria.
Exactly.
Which means the Bengali psyche is considering Maharani's time to be a way better experience.
Exactly.
And this same reflection you also find in Anandamath. Because when this Anandamath is also, again, it's a lot of controversies around that, anyways. But it's not robust controversy, just for controversy's sake. Anyway, but when these, there are some anti-Islamic statements in Anandamath, but this has to be put in context that people are coming, they are coming to a rule which is, slightly better than Sharia rule. At least the Britishers feigned equality. They did not have equality, but at least gave that illusion of equality, that you have justice, you will not be ruled by anymore by a Qazi, but you have a court. So this illusion of equality the British gave, which was unfortunately not there for the long 600, 700 years. So of course they would get delighted temporarily for 100 years.
They're seen as liberators, just as the Hindus in South India, in Mysore Samsthanam, saw Wellesley as a liberator. But clear again, when you look at the correspondence with Purnaya and Wellesley and other people, it's very clear. So when you go back to Bengal, you mentioned Anandamath, correct, but there is an even better book, not better, you can compare it that way, by the same author, Bankim, called Sitaram. Sitaram is considered, Raja Sitaram is considered as the last great Hindu king of Bengal in the assessment of none other than Jadunath Sarkar. So Raja Sitaram's, it is a novel. Bankim describes in graphic detail the kind of horrors that Hindus had endured in the previous century. Sitaram, I think, died by the close of the 18th century or the early part of the 18th century. He was a governor of an absolute scumbag called Murshid Quli Khan. Murshid Quli Khan, you see where all the impact of Islamic invasion, occurs. This Murshid Quli Khan was actually a Brahmana from Maharashtra. He was adopted by a Shia guy from Persia, businessman. And he was brought up as a Shia Muslim, and he obviously, as a young boy, he was 6 or 7 years old when he became a Muslim. So he rose up to become one of the greatest, most trusted governors of Aurangzeb.
Right.
And the horror he inflicted, I'll just give you one example. The kind of horror he inflicted in Bengal. As governor, he mercilessly extorted taxes mostly from Hindu, zamindars and laborers, farmers, etc. If you were either late in paying your tax, or if you gave even 1 naya paisa less tax, he would hang that person upside down, suspend him with a rope inside a large pit filled with human excrement, and he would dip him till neck level or chest level. This is Murshid Quli Khan, who founded what is today known as Murshidabad. That's where the name comes from.
Yeah, thanks a lot for these insights. And the atrocities is too harsh. And now let us quickly move on towards the solutions.
Bengal relapsed back 2 times. One was under Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the first revival, and it is a huge revival of temple, of songs, and the second was of course the Ramakrishna movement, but that had a greater impact on a pan-Indian scale.
But there was also this unbroken tradition of Shakti worship in the form of Ma Durga and also Radha Tattva coming up. So a question to you, Halley ji, you being from there and as a practitioner. So is this practice only in certain sects of the community or in certain economic class, or how does it percolate around across the cross sections, the Shakti worship in the form of Radha or as Durga, etc.?
No, I think Shakti worship has been the constant strain, and it has always been irrespective of the class. So we have the so-called folk traditions, we have the folk goddesses, lots of folk goddesses like anywhere else in India. You also have the proper Marga, Mahishamardini and all of these goddesses. So it has been there, the Brahmanas, the Vaidikas, the Tantrikas, the Kaulas, everybody that has worshipped goddess.
So Smashana Kali, for example, from the Chandalas community.
yeah.
Bhama Kali
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we see.
absolutely.
So
All
the cross sections of the society.
Yes,
have
there is no
the Shakti worship.
there is no community, I think, who does not have a goddess.
Right.
In fact, the Vanik is the traders. Vanik was originally, we have Vanik and Vanik. The Vanik, they have a form of Durga which they call Gandheshwari. So she's same as Chaturbuja Durga, same Ayudha, same sitting on, like Jagadhatri sitting on the lion, but she just called the goddess as Gandheshwari. So
There's one folk tradition, if I'm not mistaken, where you have a guardian deity for planting banana. And there's an annual festival, I don't know when it happens. Maybe normally Pongal.
ತಮಿಳಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರತುಕಮ್ಮ ತೆಲುಗಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರತುಕಮ್ಮ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
Correct. Adene. So banana she's worshipped as the guardian deity of banana, and ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಮನೆಗೆ ವಾಪಸ್ ಕಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡೋ ಒಂದು ಸಂಪ್ರದಾಯ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಓದ್. It's a very long essay actually. I don't know what she's called in Bengali.
We'll have to wind up
sure.
We'll also need to take questions from
Sure,
the audience.
right.
May I request Arathi
And
ji?
also, I will just say one thing regarding Ramakrishna movement. There is this word said regarding Ramakrishna. Samshaya Rakshasa Nasha Mahastram. So Ramakrishna came to destroy the Rakshasa of Samshaya, of doubts. And this we find beautifully exemplified in the discourses between Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. So Vivekananda, when he was a young boy, he comes with this first question, Aap Ishwar dekhe hai? The first question, have you seen God? This is actually the question of not just Vivekananda, it is a question of India, who is struggling to cope with Western ideas and globalization and materialism. This is the India that is stepping from the ancient India stepping into the modern era, and it is completely dishaheen. He doesn't know where to go, and it's unable to understand if the scriptures are real or if our masters, what they are saying, are real. So this is the dilemma that India exemplified, and the dilemma of Vivekananda is a reflection of just that. So when Vivekananda says that, have you seen God? He goes to Maharshi Devendranath Tagore, who's the father of Virendranath and a big leader of Brahmo movement. And when he asks the same question, he's just bewildered. He looks at him for some time and says, well, you have the eyes of yogi. If you can try, you can see God. Devendranath says. Then finally he goes to Ramakrishna. And interestingly, he was led to Ramakrishna by this European professor in Calcutta University, not by an Indian. So this Mlecchatarana Bhavamurti was already there. It was a European who first recognized. He said he was reading a poem of Wordsworth,
yes.
And then
Ecstasy.
he said,
a poem called Ecstasy.
Ecstasy.
And he is describing, giving the meaning of the word ecstasy. And he's at a loss of words. He says many things and says there's one man in Kolkata, in Dakshineshwar, who experiences, a priest he experiences ecstasy. You can see it there. That leads Narendra to.
Yes, and then Narendra goes and asks this question, have you seen God? And the first answer Ramakrishna gave was, yes, I see him as close as you, even closer. So that was a dramatic answer to this most simple but most profound question. So that was it. Ramakrishna is approving the 3,000, 4,000 years legacy of our scriptures, that everything is real. And then later on, also in different places, Ramakrishna says, I take everything. I take Tithi, Nakshatra, Tiktiki is the Chipkali, the lizards. Don't sneeze, don't laugh. I take everything. I don't leave anything away. Because he being the Mahapurusha, if he leaves, people will leave everything. So that's why he says this. So he also takes the trances of the folk tradition, that which is usually disregarded by the mainstream, that it's all superstitious thing. He also accepts that. So that is actually
everything has a place, but what
place.
is right for you, you choose.
Right for
he gives an example of Marulu matte Sakre,
so he's
a
actually
heap of sand and
weaning the ancient India to the modern India. That's what he has been doing.
Brilliant.
Great contribution.
So his other subterranean contribution is that the new Indian Renaissance that Bengal pioneered. You see, the new Indian Renaissance first arose in Bengal, because like I said, Bengal was the first region to lose independence. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa formed a spiritual foundation which led to this all-round renaissance. So any movement, be it, intellectual renaissance, is all-round flowering that happened in the second half of the 19th century happened in Bengal. In those days, English education was spread how quickly from Macaulay 1835. By 1870, Bengalis used to look down upon English universities, schools and colleges. They gave it one name. They called them Ghulam Khanas, means slave producing factories. Contribution
we should revive that name now.
Absolutely. We'll have
To say, anyway, I cannot end without mentioning Swami Vivekananda. So his contributions are very, very great. First of all, I was just observing his life. 32 and a half years of his life, he was hardly known to the world. And the last 7 years only he was in public life. So it's like the roots are so deep, and the tree you see is almost 1/3 of the size of the roots. So his life was full of tapasya, lot of learning. His Balya and Kaumarya and Yavana went into studies with other, like our Dr. Ganesh, totally into learning, study Bengali, Hindi, English, Samskrita literature. And then he actually met Ramakrishna and he saw real examples, lived with him, and then his tapasya started. He went to so many sadhus. Many people don't know he knew Hatha Yoga very well. He practiced Hatha Yoga under Pawahari Baba in Ghaziabad. And apart from that, he lived with all types of people, the kings, the poor people, the untouchables, the scholars, all varnas, and he had a perfect understanding. Kannadadalli heltivalla nadi midita anta. He knew the pulse of India, and I think this gave him a clear holistic understanding of Bharata, that of course on the top at the surface there's so much of storms and all that, but deep under the ocean there's so much of calm. Similarly, amidst all this turmoil, the DNA, the Rishi DNA, as he puts it, adu namma dhamanigalalli harita ide, it's flowing in our veins, just scratch and bring it out, he says. So he understood that from the tribal man till the Veda Vida Brahmana, everybody carries the DNA and the capacity can always be revived. So he went around saying, awake, arise and stop not till the goal is reached. He just wanted to awaken. So, many things he told, he said, Indianize the Indian education, one of his very good words. So he said, the only way you can counter the British is by doing the schools and hospitals and all the relief work yourself. Because you cannot preach dharma to the empty stomach. So give them food, give them education, give them schools, give them everything. And he set up so many missionary our Ramakrishna mission schools. And he also says a country that has forgotten its past has no future. So know what you are. So he set up so many publication houses, lot of dharmic literature. Today Ramakrishna Math literature is known for its quality, text and flawless text. And yes, even the very sampradayistas who don't consider them as sampradayika sannyasis, they have to see their Saswara Veda mantra for good text. So that is also one thing that Swami Vivekananda did. And particularly he says, if people cannot come to you, go to the people. Go to every village, every home and tell them you are not slaves, you are Amrutasya Putraha. Shunumantu Vishve Amrutasya Putraha. Nam Kuvempu ಅವರು ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಸನ್ಯಾಸಿ ಗೀತೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ನಿಜವನ್ನರಿತವರೆಲ್ಲೋ ಕೆಲವರು, ನಗುವರುಳಿದವರೆಲ್ಲರೂ, ನಿನ್ನ ಕಂಡರೆ ಹೇ ಮಹಾತ್ಮನೆ ಕುರುಡರೇನನು ಬಲ್ಲರು. ಗಣಿಸದವರನ್ನು ಹೋಗು ಮುಕ್ತನೆ ನೀನು ಊರಿಂದೂರಿಗೆ, ಸೊಗವ ಬಯಸದೆ ಅಳಲಿ ಗಳುಕದೆ ಕತ್ತಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂಚಾರಿಗೆ, ನಿನ್ನ ಬೆಳಕನ್ನು ನೀಡಲೈ ಸಂಸಾರ ಮಾಯೆಯ ದೂಡಲೈ. ಇಂತು ದಿನ ದಿನ ಕರ್ಮ ಶಕ್ತಿಯು ಮುಗಿಯುವವರೆಗೂ ಸಾಗಲೈ. ನಾನು ನೀನುಗಳಡಿದು ಆತ್ಮದೊಳೆಳಿದು ಕಡೆಯೊಳು ಹೋಗಲೈ. ಏಳು ಸಾಧುವೆ ಹಾಡು ಚಾಗಿಯ ಹಾಡನು, ಹಾಡಿನಿಂದೆಚ್ಚರಿಸು ಮಲಗಿಹ ನಮ್ಮ ಈ ತಾಯ್ನಾಡನು. ತತ್ವಮಸಿ ಎಂದರಿತು ಹಾಡೈ ಧೀರ ಸನ್ಯಾಸಿ. ಓಂ ತತ್ಸತ್ ಓಂ. Sannyasi, the song of sannyasi. So he says, go to every nook and corner, give them love, give them service, give them education, give them whatever you want, give them motivation, just motivate, be motivated. So he knew exactly what had to happen. In his own words, he says, what is it that India lacks? Not philosophy, not culture, not manpower, not resources, it is self-esteem that has been trampled upon by centuries of colonization. So his one and only Uddesha was to just Rashtra Kundaliniya Jagarana. That is what he wanted to do, and he did very, very effectively. And his great contribution is Nivedita. He teaches her Karma Yoga. I just love this. He tells Nivedita, Karma Yoga is not easy. Don't think it will be so nice. You come here, start doing service, everything will go fine. No, you have to go to every doorstep, and they will slam on your face. People will ridicule you, people will oppose you, people will insult you, but you have to take it with a calm, and you have to face the door slamming on at least 99 doors. In the 100th doorstep, you will get the person you really want. You'll get the help, you'll get the acknowledgement. To get that person on the 100th doorstep, you have to subdue your ego and face all the 99 door slams. And he says, this is Karma Yoga. Unless and until you subdue your ego, dilute your ego, you can't do any Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is Jnana Yoga, where again it's dilution of ego. So these ideas are really beautiful, and I'll go ahead. Nivedita, of course, she's extraordinary. Being a European, what she did for us is so great. She countered the British more fiercely than Indians themselves. She was in the Anushilan Samiti, she was a part of Jugantar, and she supported Avanindra Tagore, and in fact they say that his this Bonga Mata or Bharat Mata, as she called it, who were on the verge of conversion. And Tulsi Maharaj or Nirmalananda, unfortunately we have forgotten him. He was such a giant of spiritual power and service. He opened 18 centers in Kerala. He worked so extensively, and he blocked conversions. He worked with Narayana Guru, and we also know how Narayana Guru and the Edavas were encouraged by Swami Vivekananda to start their own matha. The upper caste were not allowing them into the temple, so the temple entry program was done by Swami Agamananda, who was a disciple of this Tulsi Maharaj, and a lot of work they did. They gave sannyasa to untouchables and sahabhojana with untouchables. All these were started by Tulsi Maharaj. Ekanath Ranade, we know, he was greatly inspired by Vivekananda. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was so greatly inspired by Vivekananda. He says, I am possessed by Vivekananda. I don't think I have to say anything more. And of course Nivedita, and then Swami Achalananda and Swami Shubhananda, two young doctors. Just after completing their doctor degree, they went to Kashi for tapasya. They saw this ailing or dying woman, old woman on the banks of Ganga. They were moved. They had just 25 paisa in their hands, but they were doctors. They nursed her. 5 days she survived, and then she died, but with dignity. And after that, they came and reported to Swami Vivekananda. He said, very good, start Ramakrishna Home of Service. And then they realized that the whole of Kashi, Haridwar, Himalaya, and all the Tirtha Kshetras, they were not just thousands, but lakhs of sadhus and sannyasis and beggars who had nowhere to go if they got a simple fever or cough or cold. They were dying. So these people said, but we don't have any money, anything. He said, go. Money will come and fall. Men are wanted. So these two boys with not a single penny in the hand, they go there, they start nursing people on the streets, and queues started getting formed, and people came to them, and slowly benevolent people gave them support. I have gone to all these places, Ramakrishna Home of Service in Kashi, in Benares, in Vrindavan, in Haridwar.
That it's changed the face of Hinduism forever.
Yes.
So now when you see this Hinduism that emerged after post Vivekananda, there is all the Pratishtanas have a charitable dispensary, a school, a university. So this trend that every religious order should have a hospital is again Vivekananda's vision.
And when I went to this Haridwar, in all these places, all the lakhs and thousands of sadhus of different mathas and paramparas who have had these charitable services free for many, many decades, they all together have funded and made the statues of Vivekananda in all these places. You can see them today.
Rameshwaram on Jaga ide, before I forget, because this is so engaging. So ಒಂದು ವಟವೃಕ್ಷ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ on the land belonging to somebody, I was here ಅಂತ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ he wrote something on a paper and stuck it on a tree or something. I forgot the exact context, but he simply says I was here ಅಂತ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ signs, and he gives it to the owner, and that man is in ecstasy. He builds a charitable home and a small primary school, elementary school kind of thing. It is still there.
Rameshwaram, yes.
ಈ ತರ
And
ರೆಕಾರ್ಡೆಡ್ ಇದೆ ಇಷ್ಟು, ಅನ್ರೆಕಾರ್ಡೆಡ್ ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ನೋ ಹೌ ಮೆನಿ ಥೌಸಂಡ್ಸ್.
ಮೂರು ಜನ ಹೆಸರು ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ನಾನು. ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅಂಬಿಕಾನಂದ ಅಂತ, he was a revolutionary. We all think that today Ramakrishna Math is very soft nationalism ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಅಂತ. It actually tamed down to that. But it was news to me. I was telling Arjun, ಇವತ್ತೆಲ್ಲ ಓದ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಂಗೆ ಮೈ ರೋಮಾಂಚನ ಆಗ್ತಿತ್ತು. These people like Swami Ambikananda and others like Swami Jnanananda, they were all a part of the Anushilan Samiti, who were a very secretive revolutionary group guided by Aurobindo and Nivedita. They were so fierce. One of them, Jnanananda, was also, he used to make bombs. Okay, so I think we should clap. So Swami Nirvanananda, Swami Atma Prakashananda, Jnanananda particularly, he was caught for making bombs, and he was also put into the Kalapani prison. He underwent very, very harsh imprisonment, and his limbs were so weak when he returned. And after that also he was a prolific writer and speaker. And Swami Vedantananda, all these people who was a contemporary of Subhash Chandra Bose, and of course the Anandamath militant nationalism, I read there that they themselves say how Swami Vivekananda used to tell them, if you don't have a Hindu...
Small correction. Please, and this is not just for you, for everybody. Please don't use words like militant nationalism. It is a term given by our opponents to defame us.
Okay.
Just call it freedom struggle.
Kshatra.
Or armed freedom struggle. Or armed resistance.
Okay.
There's nothing like militant nationalism. It doesn't mean anything.
Corrected.
It means you're calling all our freedom fighters are terrorists. That's what it means really.
Okay, fine. So Ananda Math, that movement also was greatly inspired by Swami Vivekananda. They have mentioned themselves how Swami Vivekananda in their closed Baiఠaks used to tell them, unless and until you have a Hindu rule, you can't do anything. So you must fight for freedom. And eventually, of course, it tamed down because of many problems. The problems from the British, they were always having surveillance over Belur Math, and there were threats, and then the communist government, and then of course the pressure of maybe Congress, I think.
The communist government wanted to make a coffee house of Belur Math. Pramod Das Gupta had launched a statement that we will make a coffee house of Belur Math.
Thankfully, there was a terror attack.
Start doing that. And there was a real threat of Naxal attack during the 70s.
Yes. In fact, Swami Harshanandaji was narrating how two suicide bombers came, it seems. They came with bombs to Belur Math entrance. What happened, we don't know, but suddenly it blasted there. And their bodies were stuck to the walls. Like this happened. So then they became alert. Of course, now they have gone soft. They only focus on social and spiritual matters. I think watering the roots is also important. What is visibly seen as Kshatra also must be back with Brahma, right? So they are focusing on protecting our literature and dharmika bhava, character making,
I think when we see the history of nationalism in Bengal, there were two categories. There was one who were making the bombs, and there was this class of master moshai who were the teachers. They never made bombs, but they used to teach these beautiful songs to these little children. And then used to say, you will grow up in a free India. Also, they were basically the people who were impregnating the minds with nationalism. And this whole ecosystem worked beautifully. So one was not taking the bombs, but they were indoctrinating. The other actually took up the bombs. So Ramakrishna Mission, I think, belongs to that first category of Master Moshai, who is providing the ideological.
I should just mention these institutions, just the names.
Pastors are so inspired to share their knowledge.
I must mention these
There's
names.
one consequence of
I
your
have no
master.
problem going ahead, but
Just a list of names. Sorry.
Yeah.
ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡಿ
There's one consequence. ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಾನು ಮರ್ತೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟೆ, ವಯಸ್ಸು ನನಗೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ. So, one consequence of this Master Moshai culture, beautiful actually, is the passage of a law called a Dramatic Performances Act. That is still the root act for something called a censor board. So, when plays were being performed, written by these Master Moshais, plays and literature, poetry, songs, all this, the British it took them about 7-8 years to realize the impact, and they clamped down by passing this act saying that every single piece of literature that these masters write should first pass through our official approval, and only then it can be staged or circulated. So the Dramatic Performance Act was later rebranded after independence as the Indian Censorship Board or some nonsense like that. So we have followed the same template and made it worse.
I just have to mention these names. It's very important because the institutions inspired by Swami Vivekananda and this Ramakrishna Mutt are very important because they are today, they are so valuable for us. And first and foremost is the Rashtriya Swayamsevaka Sangha, which was started by Golwalkar ji, Dr. ji, and he was a direct disciple of Swami Akhandananda. I told you how Akhandananda ji was a Simha. He used to go around Bangladesh and all over India awakening masses. So I don't have to say much. Today we are celebrating the 100th year of RSS, and all that spirit of Kshatriya they have taken across very effectively. And then we have, during his time only, Tulsi Maharaj, he started Vivekananda Mission. There was something called Ramakrishna Sharada Mission, and one thing called Bharat Sevashram Sangha. I've seen in many parts of North India, traveled a lot.
Again, I mean, it was modeled on the Ramakrishna Parampara,
Yes,
but
yes.
it's a Gaudīya-vaisnava Parampara.
Yes. Here we have the Ramakrishna Vivekananda Ashramas groups in Karnataka, and we have a Bhava Prachar Parishad in Ramakrishna Mutt, where we are also part of it. All those small or big institutions which have derived inspiration. And
I think after the entire structure of Hinduism undergoes a change, so all the organization that comes up post Ramakrishna Mission follow the same footsteps, namely giving Veda mantra to non-Brahmins as well as white people, which was not there in the old school, charitable work and corporate structures, not in a negative sense to say that, institutionalized Sangha Shakti, so all these, which come up, and even now.
Okay, I have to mention two very interesting things. One is that Vivekananda International Foundation, founded by none other than Ajit Dovalji, our honorable NSA, and I read that it is called the nursery of the PMO. All the best brains and very skilled and patriotic youth are picked up from there for our PMO. So to this day, and of course our very, very honorable Rajarshi Shri Narendra Modi ji, he is also inspired by Vivekananda. I many times feel maybe our Bandra or something.
He wanted to be a sannyasi in the mission.
He's got Diksha from Atmasthana. And Atmasthana ji told him, no, you don't fit here, you have another world to work with. And we have SVYM here, Girijana Kalyana Kendra, B.R. Dilsalide, Dr. Sudarshan, Dr. Balu, they're all doing human work. So there are so many such, and particularly in Pavagada Swami Japananda, the whole of Pavagada district is now free from tuberculosis and many other such diseases. One man is working like a Simha. So many such examples are there across Bharata and across the world. And I also visited in San Francisco, the Vedanta Society. They also told about many activities there. So it's like one mara bandre, one tree comes, it gives so many seeds. Like that one Ramakrishna movement has given a lot. Of course, everybody has given. One of them is Ramakrishna Mata. I am very happy. I should thank my parents for taking me to satsang at a very young age. If they had taken me to mall or some movies, maybe my taste would have been different.
There were no malls back then, so you're safe.
They took me to Ramakrishna Mutt. I heard the first Harikatha there, the first bhajans there, the first pujas there, the first Vishnu Sahasranama, everything there. My mother is very much here. So everything, they exposed me to this culture, and then they took me to Ganesh sir, they took me to everything I asked for. So I request parents to please nourish your children, take them to the right people. Good people are around, but it's, the choice is in our hands. With these words, Bolo Bharat Mata Ki.
Jai. Thanks a lot. Thanks. We really need to appreciate the panelists. Look at the kind of notes and the preparation that Dr. Arathi ji and Sandeep ji have come with for this panel. And of course, Halley ji has been living in Kolkata from birth, and it's an experiential wisdom that he has got. Absolutely fabulous, and it's going on record, and it will be published online as well.